Hey, I'm Stan Stolniker with Hub Culture, and we are joining Sue Kanoho with the Hawaii Visitors and Convention Bureau and working with Kima in Kauai to talk a little bit about Aqua, the active quarantine user ally, and the concept of resort bubbles, which is something that Kauai has been looking at leading in terms of its plans for reopening to tourism here in Hawaii post-COVID. Hi, Sue.
Hi there. Aloha, Stan. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. We wanted to get together with you today, just have a little bit of a chat about the reopening plan for Hawaii and particularly Kauai, and then a little bit about our project that we've been working on with you called Aqua. A lot of people have had questions about the concept of resort bubbles, which have had a lot of press within the state of Hawaii and for many visitors who want to come here. So can you give us a little bit of background about what the thinking is behind resort bubbles as a kind of opening?
Right. So we've been at this for 5 months. We're going into the 6th month now. Our cases have been fairly low, so we're really happy about that, really based on a really good community response of following the rules, wearing face masks, social distancing. So we're really doing quite well and feeling that maybe we could start a soft opening. And the thought was maybe we could come up with this idea of a resort bubble where they stay on property, get out of your room. Because right now, I think everybody knows the 14-day quarantine is basically you're in your room, straight 14 days. All food has to be delivered to you. You don't get out. You don't get to rent a car. No activities, nothing. So it's a fairly punitive quarantine.
Rigorous, right?
Right. We've done a really good job and why the numbers are so low. But that said, I think it's tough, right? I mean, you come here for 14 days. Granted, if you're here for a month, it's your penance to pay to get out and enjoy the island. But I think it comes down to, could we loosen up just a skosh and let them maybe go to the pool and come back or take a walk and come back? And what I liked about the Aqua bracelet was that one, it would identify who is under the modified quarantine is what we're calling it. Also have the ability to track them, right? It wasn't just let them go and do whatever you want. There's an ability to track. And so obviously when we met, we tested it and tried different locations and realized, what I really enjoyed is you've been very honest and upfront about what it takes to make it successful. And I think that's important that everybody understand, okay, in order to have this work the way it should work, these are the things that you need to do. And these are the elements that you have to have firing and, the way it would work successfully. So we found that at the various properties, there's been an interest. We have 5 properties that are interested in trying this. And so based on what we call the emergency proclamations here, we clear things here locally. And then we present them to the governor. And the governor put in his 12th emergency proclamation the ability to do resort bubbles. And you've probably heard on Maui, they're doing one with the film crew right now. Much more rigorous than what we were talking about, but certainly an opportunity to bring people in, but also to monitor them and make sure they're healthy. And once they clear quarantine, obviously you're able to go out and enjoy the island, which you've kind of discovered is not a bad place to be.
Yeah, it's certainly been a great place to be during this whole year, really. A little bit of background about Aqua. We think about this idea of threads, which build a fabric. And so there are a number of different threads that look at your location, the data that you're transmitting, your phone signal, your battery, and other things to basically paint a picture of a person's quarantine. And we look at places that they've been, if they're walking around or moving around a geolocation, so to speak, and then making sure that they're staying within a fixed period of space for that person. As you guys move into this idea about how to reopen with resort bubbles, there has been some comments from the community about the dangers of having people come in. But at the same time, other people are obviously very dependent on visitors to the island, and that's a huge part of the economy here. How do you guys think about balancing those situations between the people who want things to stay closed and then the people who need things to open?
So my job is always a tightrope walking, both sides, because with tourism, you have to have the community support and you have to have the island able to receive people. So we're able to receive people now, but the community, I think everybody realized what tourism is to Kauai. I think every once in a while, some people tend to lose the focus of how important it is. It's good and it's bad. I mean, we've talked about diversified economies for a long time. We have yet to find something that would replace tourism, but certainly there's things that enhance other industries. And I think ag tourism was one of them, where we talked about taking agriculture and really enhancing it with the ability to go on the farm and do different things. So I think that's translated well to the community and so things like that. But I think for this particular situation and challenge is where we are. Is a lot of people don't want any COVID on Kauai ever, ever, ever. And sadly, I don't know that that's possible to never have nothing. Current case right now from a resident, most of the majority of the COVID positive cases have come from traveling residents and not so much visitors. And obviously because we have very few visitors here now, but travel is the issue, right? So it's travelers, regardless of whether you're a resident or a visitor, it's the travelers that is the challenge. So, I think the sad part is if we wait for a vaccine, one, don't know if everybody's going to take the vaccine. And two, are we going to just run with the 14-day quarantine for the rest of our lives? If that's the case, many businesses will not be able to survive here on Kauai. And clearly we've already lost a lot of businesses. So the question is, could we open softly, with what we call a soft opening with the resort bubble, see how it goes, test it. Obviously the person that is on the receiving end of the Aqua bracelet has to commit to honoring the rules. If you don't, as you've seen, we actually are enforcing to the nth degree anybody who breaks quarantine by arresting them. And it's a $5,000 fine and or a year in jail. So we need people that are committed to the place and willing to honor that. And I feel like some of these resorts are so beautiful. It's one of those, some people said, I'm going to come and write a book. They're coming and work on their thesis or whatever it is. It's a downtime for sure.
And some of these resorts are large enough that you really can have a great couple of weeks just on the resort. Is that right?
Right. It won't be the full experience that we normally have, right? Because obviously not all the restaurants would be open. It's not going to be a full experience. But gosh, some of the views, to watch the sunrise and a sunset every single day and from a great view and have a walk and take a swim is pretty nice and is not as torturous as the current quarantine is, sitting in a room staring at the four walls. So.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have been waiting week after week, month after month to understand a little bit more about the longer term approach towards COVID in the islands, because it's not like you can just drive somebody to Connecticut if the hospital or the medical system gets overloaded. And we've seen more of cases happening on Oahu, which has been stressing the system a little bit. As the state and the county develops its longer term plan, how do you see things like Aqua playing a role in the longer term strategy? We can't make promises about anything, and because no one knows the future, but how do you see it evolving, say, until the end of the year?
Well, I would think between now and the end of the year, it plays a pretty strong role based on this is a tool, right? We've always talked, you and I have talked about this. It's a tool towards managing quarantine, right? It's not the silver bullet. It's not the answer. It's a tool to help manage people. Right now, to come here without the Aqua bracelet, you would be in a room with a one-time use key, and that's it. And you have all your food delivered to you for 14 days. That's it. That's all you can do. And anybody who steps out of that room will be arrested. You have to really have a commitment to come here. And obviously many are coming here for beyond the 2 weeks, which is why you would do it. And so the opportunity comes up and says, okay, could we make it less painful for them and still protect the community and still protect I know the staff is a concern, right? But one general manager had said, you really almost have to treat everybody COVID positive for the time being right now until we can get to either, vaccine that works for many or herd immunity or whatever it might be. But for right now, everybody has to do face masks when they're outside. Everybody has to social distance. We have a limit on gatherings. That is our reality till the end of the year.
And how does it work with testing? How does testing fit into this overall scenario?
Right. So right now, as we speak, and this could be changing in the next couple of weeks, but right now, Governor Ige had presented that somebody that had a COVID-19 by CLIA lab, if you had that test and it was negative 72 hours before getting on the plane, you would be able to not quarantine. However, as you know, our top markets are on the mainland in California and right now, unfortunately, the Pacific Northwest, which is on fire. So getting a test to go on vacation was not viable at that time. When they talked about an August 1st opening, the labs and people were like, you want to use it, you're not sick and you want to take a test to go on vacation. It was like, no, we're not going to do that. And if you had taken it, and you didn't get your results before the 72 hours getting on the plane, it wouldn't count.
Right.
So it was not a viable plan at that time based on what happened on the mainland with the surging. Had the surging not happened, we might be in a different place today, right this second, if it had worked. I will say the thing that I have heard and seen and probably would look forward to is the possibility of a second test. I know Tahiti's doing that and some other destinations are doing that. I think that would be a little more insurance for our islands to make sure that that first test just says at that moment that you took the test, you're not positive. It doesn't ensure that you will not turn positive. That's always a worry for us, right? Because we've done so well and we protect the island and the people in our kupuna that we want to make sure we're doing what's right for the place and the people first. And obviously, if we were to open on a resort bubble and suddenly had a huge surge, we would obviously not continue with that. Yeah. But the intent was a lot of the business are saying, look, we're at 0 to 1 case. How much longer can we stay closed without trying to open? And that's really what this is all about, is could we come up with an alternative to ease into it? And that's what this is all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the idea of a combination of tracking and testing is what's working in Bermuda. They have hundreds of arrivals a day now coming in, and they're still managing, but they do have a very robust testing program combined with Aqua, which, knock on wood, so far seems to be working pretty well. They have 3 or 4 flights a day coming in now, where they have a lot of people who maybe would arrive without a test. What about for owners? Is it sort of the same situation? Or I know that owners are able to go to their home when they arrive on the island.
So in addition to, there's a new program that they just launched called the Safe Travels Program. So they went digital and you have to fill out the form before coming onto island. We also have a Kauai Police Department, County of Kauai form, and that was because we needed the data right away based on your arrival. And so we do have a second form, which I know is an inconvenience for people, but that's okay. We're still protecting the community, and that's what's important. If you travel in a pandemic, plan for a little extra time. That's the way it is now. And if it takes a little longer to protect our island, that's the way we feel is the right thing to do. And so we also have the planning department down at the airport, and they are checking because, believe it or not, we actually had people who were not telling the truth and saying that they were the owner when they were not the owner. So when we actually check their ID and then we check the tax map key and registration for that TVR, we would find that they were not the owner. And so if you are the owner, you're good to go. And you can stay in your vacation rental and quarantine there and then stay on if you want. And we've had quite a few people come here. And our length of stay at this time is at 30 days, which is 300% up from what it used to be. So I think it's become, hey, if I'm going to have to quarantine somewhere, I'm going to quarantine on Kauai. If I'm going to have to hang out somewhere for the next few months, I want it to be on Kauai because of their connections to our island.
Yeah. So that actually raises another point, which is the surge in people moving to Kauai, spend longer periods of time here. I know several people who've brought their children, putting them in schools here. What does it mean right now if you're thinking about coming longer term to Kauai? What's the approach and what's the thinking around that?
Well, hopefully you have a way to sustain yourself. With the unemployment so high right now, nobody should really be coming here without a job. I mean, if you're independently wealthy or you have the ability to work remotely, fine. But coming here without a confirmed housing and without a confirmed job is actually not helpful to Kauai whatsoever. So that's one thing that's really important to us because we have limited resources available for the 72,000 people that are here. And so to have a mass introduction of people that would then take a toll on our resources would not be good. But for those that you described that are coming, that are working remotely, that have jobs and are getting housing, then great. We want to make sure you get in tune with our community, you get in tune with what is appropriate. Right now, we require face masks when you're out and about. We have a limit on how many people can gather. Social distancing is required. If you honor those things and you honor who Kauai is, then I'm sure it'll be fine. And then they can assimilate into who we are as an island. But Kauai is not for everybody. I'll tell you that right now. We have seen, I always kind of joke about the people that were in my 30th birthday picture and my 40th are not the same. So there's always, and I know you found this out, Stan, is that, there's a little bit of standoffish when people first come here because we think they're just not going to make it. They're not going to be able to handle. And I think Kauai is a place that either it speaks to your heart and you get it or you don't. And that's a little story about who we are as an island.
Well, and it certainly does have a welcoming, aloha for visitors to share in the natural beauty and the culture of Kauai, which is really astounding. And you do see that all over the island, this welcoming attitude towards people who want to come and just experience Kauai. And I guess living here is a very different thing than coming to experience it.
Right.
And the situation with obviously the pandemic has impacted that quite a lot. In terms of the local community, many people here are trying to figure out what they do between now and the end of the year, because it is tough to get by. And there are a lot of questions that people have. Do you have any advice on just like holding in there and trying to make it work, because eventually we'll get through it? Is that sort of the message?
I think, it all depends on everybody's individual situation. I mean, there's some families on this island that have both husband and wife in the visitor industry, right? So that's double loss of income. I am so amazed at how long properties and companies, even activity companies, carried their employees with their insurance, full benefits. I have to say, a lot of times I feel like the visitor industry gets a bad rap for the amount of give back that they do to Kauai, when in fact, if you really knew how generous they are and the amount of give back that they do, not only for their employees, which I know has been really hard on having to let people go, even on furlough. It's been really painful for the companies to do this. They're very attached to their employees. So it's been a really, really, really tough time. I mean, everybody's situation is different. And if you can ride it out, great. I mean, there's some people who moved in with families. There's some people that are hooing up together. Others, I have 5 friends that have left the island and they're not coming back. The sad part about living on an expensive island is not a lot of people have a lot of savings, so that when something horrible like this happens, that they can just sit around for 6 months. My advice can't speak to anybody's individual issues other than we're doing what we can. I really am proud of our mayor. I think he's done an amazing job of being bold and made some hard decisions and really done his best to protect us, which has worked fairly well. So far, no real deaths. We had one person pass away in Arizona who's a beloved Kauai resident, but he got it there, not here. I just wouldn't want to speak for every individual, situation. And all I can say is we're doing what we can to move things forward to see if we can get open safely. I mean, that's just what's so important right now is how do you do it safely, right? Anybody can open tomorrow and just say, hey, here we go. But, you need to do it safely and you need to do it with testing and you need to make sure everybody's healthy before they get out into the community, because it would just be tragic to have a spike the way Oahu is right now. And, I have to just say, though, much of that was related to holidays and large gatherings. I mean, that should be very obvious to people at this point.
Yeah. And do you think that the rest of the islands have seen what's happened in Oahu, and is that affecting their strategies for how they're going to get through this? And
no, I think everybody, if it's not clear to everybody what I heard about the Sturgis motorcycle event that just happened, and they're saying, how could you not predict that a bunch of people getting together, thousands and thousands of people getting together with, very little social distancing. I don't even think they had face masks on. I don't want to speak for them, but, those are the things that is just in this current environment, you cannot risk. It's just too dangerous.
Especially when you're isolated the way that we are here in Hawaii,
right?
Because there is nowhere to turn.
Correct.
Right?
It's the medical. Yeah. And that's the thing. Somebody came to me and said, well, in San Diego, and I said, okay, San Diego, that is not an apples to apples comparison. A place that you can drive to get medical help versus we have 2 hospitals and, 12 respirators. That's just not a comparison.
So, Sue, how does somebody who's interested in coming to Kauai, who might be open to doing the resort bubbles, like as a tourist, because these hotels are going to need to fill up, right? If the hotel's open, they need to reach a certain level of capacity to even afford to be open. So people can come. I think the message is that these resort bubbles are coming into effect and people will be able to come. They will be able to use the whole resort. And how will they be able to find out which hotels are participating and help do their part to help keep these resorts and places operating? So
GoHawaii.com is our call to action for all islands of the Hawaii Visitors and Convention Bureau. So each island chapter, Maui, of course, has 9, Molokai and Lanai. But for all the rest of us, we have GoHawaii.com and we all have a page. Right now, under alerts, you'll see the most up-to-date information on everything. And so should that all get blessed and be positive, then we would list that there. Right now they have what's open And then you'll be able to say, okay, and then these would be the resort bubble hotels and go from there. And then you'd really have to check with each hotel to understand what their rules are going to be. Sign this and agree to this. And, and if you break this, then this is what the penalty will be. And we're actually doing a call about that today to make sure that we're all on the same page, because as you noted, it's a tool, but the tool has to be managed.
Yeah, absolutely. And, from an Aqua standpoint, it's the active quarantine user ally. It's meant to be a tool to help international travels manage electronic quarantine, to manage health verifications and test results, to manage their contacts in a small way, and then also to do symptom reporting if they need to. But it is an app based on responsibility, so mutual responsibility. And as a participant, people who are participating in the program and using Aqua have a responsibility to abide by the rules in the location by which they're doing it. And those rules vary, whether it's Bermuda or Hawaii or any of a number of other locations that are planning to use Aqua. So I think that's the bottom line is it is about mutual responsibility.
I think the one thing that I really liked when we started down this road is, we said, could you do this and could you do that? And you incorporated a few of the things that we really liked. And one of them is the graduation certification, so to speak. That is something for us in the community right now, is to know, have you traveled in the last 14 days? Did you do your quarantine? Did you clear your quarantine? That's a question almost everybody's asking to make sure they know what they're putting their staff in for. So that was one idea that I think you incorporated.
Yeah, we're actually live now with graduation certificates. We're using it in Bermuda. So when a person graduates from quarantine, and it could be 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, depending on the location where they're doing it, they earn a graduation certificate in the app, and then they can then show if they want to use a facility, just to give other people peace of mind that they've gone through the quarantine process in the right way. And then we've also introduced messaging so that we can message with people inside the app. The monitors can message inside the app. So there's a lot of back and forth and conversation for all of us to help each other. Sue, one of the things that somebody told me when I first came to Hawaii a while ago was that we're all rowing in the same canoe here.
Right.
And I do think that that's really apropos here, because visitors, hotels, the government, and the local community, we're all in the same canoe, and everyone wants to get things going and get things fixed, and not just get back things to where they were, because maybe we can come back better, but we all have to work together. And I do hope that tool, Aqua, is like an oar that will help us row a little bit better. But at the end of the day, it takes the community and all the participants to actually make it work.
Right. And I think, ironically, where we were in February, even January, with over tourism being the number one discussion. I mean, we're enough already. Sukanoho and Kauai Visitors Bureau stop, and we can't keep this up. And we were really facing a capacity issue for this island. Honestly, we were at 1.4 million visitors. It was just a lot. And any given day, we had about 30 to 35,000 visitors a day on top of the 72,000 residents. So, when in a heartbeat, this went to zero. I mean, we've gone from various direct flights. We're down to one flight now 5 times a week, and that's it. We have never seen anything like this. Even when the flood came in April 2018, it was that part of the North Shore that was cut off. But I mean, and much of my job was to clarify where that was, because everybody thought the whole island was underwater, which, it was definitely impacted for about a week. But shortly thereafter, people needed to get back to business, and lots of cancellations with no understanding of what was what. So, we're always in this fine line of managing people's perception of the place and then having factual information, right? That's so critical. And that's why, making sure everybody understands what it is. And I think that's, part of what today is about, is a lot of people don't understand what it is and don't understand that it's a tool and it's an opportunity for us to better manage our people, to also protect our people. Those in the visitor industry are like, we need to open. We can't keep this up for the next 6 months.
Right. So resort bubbles, a first step towards managing the new realities. Thank you, Sue, for joining us for this conversation. Those of you who are listening, you can find more Chronicle discussions on iTunes and SoundCloud for Hub Culture, and this session here on YouTube, helping people understand the resort bubbles idea and implementation. Thank you, Sue, for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. Aloha.
Aloha.